Hello. Today I will be featuring a ship I haven't actually featured since December. It is a ship that I have multiple times recommended though, and that is of course the Leningrad, the Tier 7 Soviet premium. There is a lot of Tier 7 premiums going around of course, but the Leningrad is quite special in the sense that it's such a fun ship to play. It's always, well, I recommended it since the start. The issue it has is that it needs a bit of a specialized captain, since it doesn't really work that well with... It works okay with normal Soviet captains, but if you want the optimal experience, you need like a Gremyashi captain on it. Well, the same captain that works great on a Gremy works great on a Leningrad as well. First of all, well, looking bottom left, you can see my speed right now. 48.7 knots. This thing is stupidly fast. And of course, with the recent addition of, well, recent, but the module upgrades, you're now possible to slot a 3-minute speed boost instead of the 2-minute speed boost. So obviously being able to run at these speeds for 3 minutes means that rushing A, well, my team is still leaving the spawn, I'm already capping the A capture point. And even if a DD comes this way, my ship is so fast. You see I get detected, but I'm so fast that this Akatsuki that had a spotting advantage, the Akatsuki had what, 6.1 km spotting or something. I have a 6.6 km. Those 500 meters mean nothing to you because you're so damn fast that you claw the distance between him and yourself so quickly. The Akatsuki didn't even have time to turn around before I already spotted him, and that's of course the advantage of having not just a very good concealment of 6.6, but also being so damn fast. You are able to actively contest caps if you charge in like this. If you go for a side cap, going for B is of course stupid since the enemy fleet will be able to shoot you, but going for side caps like this with this incredible speed means that it doesn't matter what DD they have. Even if they have a Shiratsuyu, he barely has time to turn and you're already spotting him, and then he has to panic torp and flee, because when it comes to gun power, well, you got 530mm guns with a 5-second reload, and you kinda wreck any sort of torpedo boats. Gunboats are of course a different matter, but US gunboats you can beat by kiting away from them, and that's kind of how you have to deal with the Blyska as well. In fact, I would say the biggest threat to the Leningrad is a Blyska, because it's a better close-range knife fighter, whereas I would say the Lenin is a better long-range knife fighter, but you have to really gain distance to him to win that fight, and that's not always so easy. However, the one thing that the Leningrad has going for it, instead of the Blyska, is torps. It has 8 of them, and they are 8 km of range, and that's of course why I recommend going for the stealth build, not just for this capability of actively contesting caps in a Russian DD, which is something you can't really do on any other Russian DD besides the low tier ones and the Gremyashi. But the torps on the ship are quite fantastic. They are quite fast, 8 km of range, and well, you can see the reload isn't that bad either. I think it's 90 seconds. Well, you see how fast these torps are, and these are going to catch this North Carolina completely off guard. The damage on them isn't bad either. He hits a quick 3 torps, loses half his health, which means I of course want to smoke up and start shooting at him because he's used his repair. And this ship is just fun. It's always been fun. It's still fun. I could sail out around in the open and shoot, but with this many Bismarcks and Tirpitzes and whatever else there is, there would be so much secondary fire. Then again, secondary fire isn't really that big of an issue because, well, secondary shells are quite slow, and they really have huge issues trying to land shells on you with secondaries. You're one of those DDs that the secondaries don't seem to ever really hit, and that's of course because of the speed. But my speed boost is still on cooldown, and I'm waiting for my torps to reload. I got 2 fires on this guy. I do want to leave this smoke very soon because you can see the Bismarck is closing in. The nerfed Hydra of course means that I won't get spotted instantly, but it's getting a bit too uncomfortable to stay here, so I just want to drop my torps and get out of this smoke. Dropping preemptive torps, and it's time to bail. The secondaries open up on me instantly, but you can look at my acceleration, 23, 25, 27, 30, like at this point I'm already faster than the battleships, and I keep accelerating. Already at 40, my speed boost is up, and at this point I'm easily going to be outrunning them. And you can see at this point the secondaries, of course, they don't really even land anywhere near me. My torps take out the other Bismarck, and well, the secondaries, they don't land any shells. They can't, because I'm so damn fast, and that's always been the fun part about this ship. You are stupidly fast, and this Tirpitz is going to try to shoot me, and you kind of notice how awkward it is for them. Most of the people aren't used to shooting Leningrads. They don't really know where to aim, and you can see the shells. Let's look how far behind they land. Those shells, they land a good 2 ship lengths behind me, and that's because, well, he wasn't expecting me to go 47 knots, and this is with the speed flag and the speed boost, of course, but this insane speed means it's so very difficult for any ships that have slow shell velocity to hit you. It's of course the same thing with the Minsk, but the Leningrad is straight up better than the Minsk simply because it has better torpedoes. And of course the fact that it's a premium ship means that you can slot these specialized captains on it. The one downside the Leningrad has always had is of course the need for a specialized captain, which I mentioned at the start of this, I mentioned when the ship came out. And the problem is that this ship shines when you have a captain that has, well, first of all, expert marksman. That's not something that the high tier Soviet DDs want to slot. That's something the Gremyashi wants to slot. Second of all, it benefits from having AFT and concealment expert. Once again, not really something you usually slot on Soviet DDs. Soviet DDs tend to skip concealment expert entirely and just go for the pure cruiser build with AFT and then perks that buff your guns in general. So it doesn't really mesh with the rest of the captains, and that's always been my downside with this ship, is that if you have a Gremyashi, this ship is fantastic, because the same captain you use on the Gremy works perfectly on a Leningrad, because they share the same traits, they work very similarly. Akatsuki trying to ambush me, time to engage, fun and engaging perimeter, and there we go. He of course detonates, because, well, balance and fun and equal as skill, and whatever other silly reasons Wargaming come up with for adding that mechanic. And my torps finish off the battleship and the game ends. The reason why I featured this game is of course how stupidly quick this game was. 637k credits, this was my daily win I think, hence why I got so much XP. 142,000 damage, and if we look at the team score, 2,300, and this was tier 8 matchmaking. In fact, most of the ships in this game, the vast majority were tier 8 ships. And the tier 7 Leningrad had absolutely no issues of tearing through them. Of course they were dumb enough to go A on neighbors, and if the enemy is dumb enough to go A on neighbors, then as a DD that's party time for you. And looking at the detailed report, we can see that this game only lasted 7 minutes and 45 seconds. That's how short it was. 7 minutes and 45 seconds, and they got completely destroyed. So this kind of fast, furious games kind of fit the playstyle of this ship, because it's always been about speed. This ship is about making the most out of the advantages you have, which are the fantastic speed on the Leningrad. This is honestly the closest you can get to the Kaba at tier 7, and without all the downsides of the Kaba, like the horrible concealment. The Leningrad doesn't suffer from that. Of course, it doesn't have the same gunnery, it doesn't have the same devastating guns, the same turret traverse and these things, but it does play in a very similar manner, meaning that you can just sail around in the open and shoot for your heart's content without any real threat or fear. Potential damage 730k. Considering how little time I spent spotted, it shows you they really did try to kill me, but with my speed the damage I took was quite minimal. Ultimately though, this game really showed the advantages, how quickly I got to the cap, how the Akatsuki's concealment didn't really help him because I was able to close the distance, and a combination of torpedoes and gunnery. In fact, I landed 7 torps for 75k damage this game, and that still was only half my damage. I still got another 35k plus 30k from HE and fires, and this doesn't even include AP, because this ship of course has stellinium shells, which means broadside cruisers can easily be citadel, broadside battleships eat a ton of AP pen. These are all things that it also has in its arsenal. So overall, the Leningrad is still probably one of my favorite premiums in the game. It does suffer if you're from close knife fighting, because, well, you have 5 single turrets, which means if a DD pops up on the wrong side of your turret, you have to turn your entire ship around and all these issues, and you can't charge straight at an enemy ship because, once again, you have single turrets, which means the back 3 turrets won't be able to bear on your target, only the front 2 single ones. That's why the Bliska in very close ranges tends to shit on the Leningrad quite hard, and you have to turn around, you have to kite him in order to beat him. But besides those weaknesses, it's a very fun ship to play, especially if you play it to its strengths. Anyway, let's go over my recommended build. Right, as usual, I will start off with the modules. Not really much to talk about, since you can't change any modules on this premium. Consumable wise, I would recommend Premium Smoke, Premium Speed Boost, and Premium Repair, in that order if you can afford it. Upgrade wise, Main Armaments Mod 1. Aiming Systems Mod 1, you don't really need a turret traverse, because with Expert Marksman you get a comfortable 20-second turret traverse, and the AA guns is pretty pointless because your AA is awful. Here I recommend the Engine Boost mod if you have one extra. I recommend getting these from Ranked, getting these from the containers you could farm during the Clash of the Elements event. But if you can't afford it, I'd go with Propulsion. But if you do have one, the Leningrad benefits greatly from this additional speed boost. And finally, Propulsion Mode. The rudder shift is actually so good that I feel that you can get away with running Propulsion Mode on this ship. Captain perks wise, priority number 1 is of course Preventive Maintenance, followed by Last Stand, followed by Survivability Expert, and AFT. This is pretty much the very basic Soviet DD build. You go for these with the first 10 points. Because this ship has such good concealment though, you can get it down to 6.6. I do recommend getting Concealment Expert. And after you have Concealment Expert, well, here it is, you can go for multiple builds. Personally, I ended up liking running a basic firing training for the increased reload, so instead of 5 seconds you got 4.5, and considering you use so much AP on the ship, I didn't feel necessary to run Demolition Expert. And then I got Expert Marksman. But this isn't necessarily the best build, and in fact this build is quite old. If I were to make a completely new build, what I would seriously consider is exchanging basic firing training for Adrenaline Rush and Priority Target. I think Adrenaline Rush plus Priority Target would probably even make for a better build. Yes, you lose the additional 10% reload. The AA is completely pointless because your AA values are so awful, so you're not going to shoot down any planes regardless of having basic firing training or not. But you lose 10% initial DPS, but then again, if you go half HP, then you gain it right back with Adrenaline Rush, and you also gain the 10% faster reload on the torpedoes. And having Priority Target could be extremely useful to seeing how many people, because you will be spending a lot of time just basically gunboating, sailing in the open and just shooting, because, well, you're a Soviet DD and that's the way the game plays. So ultimately, if I were to make a new build right now, I would probably not opt for basic firing training and instead go for Adrenaline Rush and Priority Target. But this is the build I ran in the commentary, and this is a very solid build as well. Running Demolition Expert instead of basic firing training would also be a very solid build. Anyway, that was my Leningrad commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.